Welcome to Body Bags, presented by City of First Cremation and Funeral Services. My name is Jeremy Geiger. I'm one of the co-owners of the funeral home, and today I want to kind of talk to you about removals for us and some of the things that we may experience and encounter when we're receiving that phone call from the nursing home, the hospital, the family member. It just all depends on these situations, and we'll talk about these different scenarios as we kind of work through what we do when we receive a death call. So here at the funeral home, Kim or I would typically answer the phone, and we would take this phone call from whoever would be notifying us from the death, whether it's that nurse, could be a medical director, could be security, it could be the coroner's office, it could be you as a family member because you haven't heard anything from us yet. So when we receive that death call, we're asking certain questions. Obviously, we need to know what the deceased name is, what their date of birth may be. We also want to know who the doctor is to sign that death certificate, along with the time of death. We typically ask, are there any family members present? Because not at all times will there be a family member or next of kin that is available to talk to us there at the facility. We gather that information. Sometimes if this death would occur at home, we're going to ask, are there any obstacles that may be troublesome for us to overcome when we get there? Another thing that we may ask would be the weight of the person. It's not that we want to know that they're extremely large. We just need to know how to be prepared for the environment that we're about to encounter this deceased in, so that way we're able to perform our task very respectfully, professionally, and give you comfort that it is being done correctly for you. So when we get that information and we know where we're going, who the person is, if there's any obstacles, if it's at a facility, we may ask, which door do you want us to use? Most people may feel that we would utilize the front door at a facility to go in and make a removal. That's not the case most of the times. A lot of times we're at the back area where it's kind of private. Some facilities do it nicer than others, in my opinion. Unfortunately, most of our hospitals that we go to, they're in the shipping and receiving area. There's usually their trash compactors, their recycling centers. There's old furniture sometimes sitting around. It's kind of interesting sometimes the setting that we have to experience to get into that facility. Perception's everything, and I don't know that most people would be too pleased with some of the things that we may or may not see at these facilities to get in. Not that they're breaking any rules or laws, it's just I would make sure that area is well maintained, whether it's picking up the trash that blows in, keeping things more organized that's out there, because it can be chaotic. So once we know where we're going at this facility or house, we're going to arrive at that area. If it's at the nursing home, hospital, or coroner's office, once we arrive, we usually have to contact security or somebody who is in that facility that can open up a garage door or open up an unlocked door to bring us in, where we can actually retrieve that person. It may be in a morgue with a cooler. It could be on a hospital floor or in a nursing home room. I'm not a big fan of going on the floor and making a removal. I understand on the family's perspective of not wanting to see them leave that room and go to a cold environment where they're not maybe surrounded by love or care. But I always have felt that it may give a sense of ending or doom for those that may see us arrive in the hours of the day, whether it's in the middle of the night or during the afternoon. So I've always been a little apprehensive on that. I absolutely will come to the floor, and I will be extremely compassionate and remorseful for your loss. We'll also be very professional by making sure the deceased is covered up properly in trying to protect their identity and privacy as well. But when we get in there to that facility and we've signed our burial transit permits, we've filled out any releases that the hospitals may ask us to do, we typically will ask for a face sheet from that facility. That gives us more medical history and biographical information about you. It also indicates what other family members there may be, because if we have a healthcare power of attorney or durable power of attorney, they're going to supersede maybe the next of kin, which could be a brother or sister or a child or a spouse. It's not too often we see the spouse get overruled by a healthcare power of attorney or durable power of attorney, but it happens sometimes. So when we get in there, we deal with the staff on the facility side. We get our paperwork filled out, and then we're making that transfer onto our removal cot. Now I want to kind of talk about the facility side. If we're at the nursing home or we come to the house to make that removal, I typically will leave my removal cot out in my vehicle. I will bring in the person that will help me on that removal, so that way they can be introduced to the family and they understand who they're working with through this process. I am very attentive to their needs. I ask questions that kind of open them up to share more thoughts and memories about that person. I typically will ask about the type of disposition that they're wanting. Do they want them embalmed to have a little longer time with their loved one prior to the cremation? We could always embalm and have that traditional funeral as well, and that gives them a little bit more time. But a lot of families, they choose not to do the embalming. It's not required in our state of Indiana. We just have to abide by some health codes. So we're going to bathe with disinfectant soaps. We're going to set the features, dress and bathe them correctly, so that way just the immediate family can have that time there at the funeral home. But asking these certain questions, it's going to lead the family into describing about this person that they've lost. They're going to talk about where they may have worked, what some of their hobbies and passions were. They may even clue you in on the struggle that they had for the last couple of days, or what illness they may have had to battle that caused the end of their life. So being very receptive to those that are talking to you is very important as a funeral director, or even as a removal technician. Definitely the removal technicians may have a different mindset to the removals than we do. As a funeral director or funeral home owner, I'm definitely going to take my time with this family when they've experienced loss and called me. A removal technician may not have that same thought, because they just want to get the task done so they can either get home or they can get on to the next removal that they may need to take care of. So it's important that I feel here at City of First that we always have a funeral director with a removal tech, so that way they know we want to be slowed down, be very compassionate, listen to what the family's needs are. Some families may not come right out and say, hey, this is my situation and this is what I need help with. Sometimes you got to kind of ask a lot of questions and lead them to the water to finally admit what they're needing for their service. And each person's loss is different. Some people have accepted it and others haven't, and it's a real struggle for them. So after we've talked to the families or the facility staff about the deceased, I want to talk about making that transfer onto my removal cot. I usually will take your fitted sheet that you're laying on. I will go around all four corners of the bed. I'll leave your pillow behind and give you my pillow. and I will cover them up with their sheets, kind of cocoon them with that fitted sheet and their sheets around them. I will slowly bring them to the edge of the bed, close to my removal cot. Depending on the size of the person, this can be done by a single individual, or it could require 2 or 3 people. Once I get them closer to the edge, I have slid my left hand underneath their head, supporting their head and neck. My right arm goes underneath their waist, hip area. That's how I'm kind of sliding them towards the edge, or kind of gently sliding them with that sheet. Never do I grab the arms or legs and pull in that fashion. I've seen it done that way. It's not very pleasant or respectful to the family. Not that it's going to hurt anybody or anyone. It's all about the respect and dignity of that person that's just passed away. So then once I got them to the closest point to that edge, and my hands are still underneath them, I will lift up gently to kind of take that release of pressure of them coming down off of the bed onto the removal cot, because I do lower it just maybe a couple inches below the edge of that bedside. And then I place them on the removal cot very gently, very softly. I will position them nice and straight on that removal cot, put their hands on top of their abdomen. Typically I do a leftover right, just so that way if they are married, they could see the wedding ring still visible, no different than an embalming. Occasionally I'll run into a situation where I'll go right over left. It might just be trauma to the hands or darkened nail beds that didn't get cleared during the embalming process. I'll help the deceased get their head kind of centered on the pillow. It's kind of interesting. You may think that the body goes completely limp, and you can move them however you want, and that's not always the case. By the time you get there, there may have been a little bit of period of time that the deceased was down and maybe rigors started in. There's a lot of families that we encounter that their loved one is dealing with arthritis. It's really interesting to kind of encounter some of those bodies that may be contorted. They could be in a fetal position. Their hands could be bent at awkward angles. Their head may be turned away from you. On some of those circumstances, I'm not able to do anything to straighten them out, but I do the best that I can with what circumstances that we have. Once they're in that position on the cot and they look straight, I wish I could close the mouth there at the house. I've mentioned that in other episodes. Most people die with their mouth open and their eyes open. I'll get the eyes closed for the family. I wish we could develop something quick and easy to take on removals, to be able to close that mouth to give them a final goodbye. So I get them covered up on my cot with some more sheets. I do have a cot cover. Basically, it's not a pouch. It's half of a pouch, no zipper. It just kind of goes over top of them. But I don't cover the deceased up all the way when we're at the house or even at the facility, such as the nursing home or maybe the hospital floor. I'll get them on that removal cot, positioned very beautifully, cover them up, and then I'll bring the family back around that removal cot to give them one last time to say that final goodbye. I know they've been saying goodbye for an hour or more prior to me getting there, but I know them watching us leave is going to be very difficult for them. And if I don't give them that last opportunity to say the final goodbye, it could send them in a very difficult struggle with grief. They may be angry at us because they didn't get that opportunity. Even though we're going to give them another opportunity here at the funeral home, taking them out of their house is different. I recently was on a removal and I had a spouse tell me that he's not been out of the house in the last 6 months. He won't know where he's at. He won't know how to get home. So those are the things that I hear and we see that are so very important on this removal process to help develop that relationship with the family, to let them know that you do care and you are going to do this in the most dignified manner and honor that deceased. So once they're able to come around that removal cot and say their goodbyes, they're going to tell me to go ahead and you can go ahead and leave. So when we brought the removal cot in to get them positioned, I did some scouting. I'm pretty observant when I come into facilities or houses. It's not to look and see what your possessions are. It's to look and see how easy I'm going to be able to get my removal cot in and out. And do you have anything that I could potentially knock over or damage? I'll admit it, I have a tendency to knock over drinks, whether it's on your desk sitting at work or me coming to the house and making a removal and I've bumped the food tray or the nightstand next to the hospital bed and I have upset many of drinks. So I do carry extra sheets on the removal cot so I can get that all cleaned up discreetly. But it's always important when you're getting ready to exit that you do the exit with the removal cot with the deceased on a very slow, methodical, planned exit. You don't want to bump any walls. You don't want to step on anybody's dog or cat. I've been there and done that. They've yelped. I've had them try to escape out of the house. So knowing what your surroundings are is super important. This doesn't make the funeral home just look good. It makes you look good as a removal tech or a funeral director encountering these situations. Most home removals are similar, but every house is laid out differently, and there's obstacles that you wouldn't imagine that we come across that we may have to carry the person a portion of the way to get them to the cot and then out of the house. So once they're transferred, I've watched where my footing and everything is. I've made sure that I'm not knocking anybody's drinks over. I've left that cot partially uncovered with the deceased on it, just kind of as they're walking themselves to the door to say their goodbye and go to their final resting place. We will enter that doorway, and once we get about halfway through, we will stop for a moment, and I will very slowly and gently cover the deceased completely up with that cover. It is a privacy thing for the family, the deceased. It's respect for your neighbors. You may not think anybody's watching, but they are. Your neighbors are peeking in. They're seeing what's going on. They know that you're going through things at home and that a death is expected. They're sad just like you are, and they're going to try to support you, hopefully, and help you through this struggle. So being very in tune with your surroundings and environment is important, because you don't want to give any negative reactions to the family that may make that arrangement conference a little more challenging for the funeral director or funeral home. So I kind of got some notes. I'm kind of looking at some things. So we kind of talked about the exit and situating the body. The last thing I want to talk about on these removals is loading the removal cot. I kind of do this every time, whether I'm at a facility at a back receiving dock and nobody's around really looking or paying attention to me, or I'm at your house in the middle of the afternoon and the neighbors are out watching. I am very slow, I'm very gentle and mournful as I load your body into the removal cot or removal vehicle. It's nothing fast, it's nothing rushed. After the body is gently loaded into the removal vehicle, We will close the back hatch. We stand and watch that hatch close all the way, make sure it is truly locked. And then we will give our final condolences to the family. Me and my staff, we will then go to the vehicle and get in. We will be driving away in a very slow, mourningful way. I don't take out of there very fast. It's not that I'm afraid my load or deceased is going to shift in the vehicle or be upset. It's just showing that compassion and care for that deceased. We treat all of our families and deceased as if they were one of our own family members. We know one day that will be us in their shoes, and we try to treat and respect our families in the same manner that one day we will be needing that care and attention as well. So that's kind of a general synopsis of what we do and the steps that transpire with the removal side of things. When I was at the Howard County Coroner's Office yesterday, I was talking with one of their staff members, and she said to me, "You know, I don't think most people realize all of the moving parts and the people that are involved when a death occurs." And that's absolutely true. You have that death and you call the funeral home, and the funeral home takes the actions necessary to get you back and get you prepared for that service. And you may have only encountered 1 or 3 or 4 people during this funeral ceremony, but there is a whole nother group of individuals that are behind the scenes that are supporting that front end of the funeral home or funeral director to make this world go around for us in funeral service. So I appreciate every one of you that are in funeral service. Each job is extremely important. It's not overlooked. I hope that you get the acknowledgement and appreciation where you work and where you serve in your community. So that's kind of my removal side of the story. I want to share with you a death call situation. Let's have a moment for a story. Let's see. I want to take you back to mortuary school. This is kind of a 2-part story. There's 2 different scenarios that I want to share with you. They're pretty funny in my opinion. So we started mortuary school, and we were in the lecture hall when we were watching some anatomy video. Wasn't really exciting. It was pretty boring. And we hear the back door open, and we see the dean of the school walking towards the front of the stage. And I thought, oh boy, this was kind of in the spring. I thought, oh boy, he's probably either coming in to tell us we're doing a tornado drill or a fire drill. And he did not. He come right to the front of the stage and said, "Students," we were freshmen this year, "students, we have something in the embalming lab that is pretty unique. We are asking all classes to suspend for about 10 minutes, and we are going to convene in the garage area of the prep facility." And I thought, oh dear, if they're asking us to go to the garage, this is going to be interesting. Not many were putting this all together, but I knew something big was about to happen. I couldn't smell anything, and I don't have the greatest sense of smell either, but I knew it was going to be something to see. So we all file back to the garage. There's probably maybe 125 of us students there in the school, and we're filed in just kind of in a half circle around this dressing table, and there sits a body bag, and it's got its toe tags and stickers, and I could tell that it was pretty pungent in the room. I could smell something sour. Unfortunately, most decomp smells to me just smell sour. I don't get much other odors out of that. And I could see people's expressions that it was pretty strong, very unsettling to them. Several of them ended up saying, "Oh, hell no," and left. I was still pretty intrigued. I thought, what could be so interesting in that body bag? I've seen many of people in body bags. Well, they unzipped that and pulled the flap open, and it was a person that had been missing for several weeks. They were fishing at one point and fell into the Ohio River. They ended up drowning. They did rescue and search, was never able to locate the deceased. It was a gentleman. They ended up finding him several miles down the river, washed up on an island on the Ohio River, and then sat on that island shore for a few days as well, before somebody else stumbled across him. But there weren't any facial features to this person. Their body had been saturated in water so much so they were very pruny in texture. When I said there was no facial features, it was because most of that was gone. I noticed that there was some activity that was still present in that bag. The person was covered in maggots, and it was almost to the point where you could see what appeared to be like maybe a breathing movement, but it was not. It was those maggots that were moving and feeding off of that tissue. So then it led to more questions from us students to the staff of, well, what in the world are we going to do with this person? Like, in our eyes, the only thought was, it's got to be a direct cremation. The smell's so bad. The body's too far decomposed. There's nothing we can do. And they answered our questions, and they followed it up with, who's going to help with that? All of our upperclassmen, they said absolutely not. Couldn't do it. And the numbers slowly started to shrink, and people started walking away and leaving and going back to class, and it ended up being about 4 of us standing there. Most of them were, the 3 of them were kind of in awe of what they were witnessing. The odor didn't bother them too bad. And I just looked at my embalming professor and I said, hell, I don't care. So I can't smell it anyways. I said, I'll treat it. So what are we going to do? So we ended up treating the deceased with some chemicals to stop the bug infestations and kill the maggots. Then we saturated some cotton absorption pads with arterial solution to try to do some external preservations. There was no way to embalm the body. The vascular system was pretty much goo. Didn't even attempt it. At that point, you're just trying to control the odor, eliminate any pests or bugs that you may have. And then we put some smelling powders and absorption powders in that body bag. We zipped it up. We glued the zipper. We duct taped the zipper. We got another body bag. Put them in that, so they're double body bag, and then we glued and zipped and taped that back up. And the funeral home ended up having a casket for us. They brought us a 20 gauge ceiling casket, and we placed the deceased in those 2 body bags in that sealed casket. And they were able to go forward with a funeral service and burial for that deceased. I wish we could have been able to provide an opportunity for them to see that their loved one, but unfortunately, that person was so far gone, there was no opportunity to do that. My other interesting story with Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science was a gentleman. He went to school originally to be a banker. He worked in the banking industry for a couple of years, and he had a friend who his family owned a funeral home, and they asked him to come help one weekend, and he kind of got bit by the funeral service bug. He thought it was so interesting, and he loved helping people, but he had no idea what he was really doing. So he chose a really good facility to get his education and background in funeral service. He did really well on the academic side. I'm not sure where he's at today in his funeral service career, but this memory, it's going to stay with me till I'm no longer here, and I know every person that was in the prep room when this event happened is in the same boat with me. They're never going to forget this, and rest assured you, they will never make this same mistake as well. So this gentleman, we're going to call him John. John had lab day, and we received a couple of autopsy bodies that needed to be embalmed and prepared for transportation back to local funeral homes. And the organs are typically in a red biohazard bag in your abdomen after that Y incision's opened, and we need to treat those organs with some kind of formaldehyde chemical, so that way it preserves them and keeps them from decomposing. So we pull that bag out and we put it in another bucket, and we dump some chemicals in there, and we typically let that sit while we perform the embalming. And then once we're done, then we'll place that bag into their chest cavity. Sometimes we'll take them out of the bag and place just the organs in the cavity. Just really depends on the amount of organs or mass that we're dealing with. We don't want to give you a potbelly look to you. So just depends on that situation. So we finished the embalming, and we said, John, can you go over there and grab that viscera bucket and bring it over to us, because we're ready to get that back into the body? And John says, oh yeah, absolutely, the one I set along the wall. And we said, yep, that's the one we need. John grabs this bucket, and he's carrying it like he was just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He was so proud to be carrying this, almost like shoulder height, face height, well, not quite above his head. And John tripped. Oh boy, did John trip ever. When we were in the embalming lab, we had to wear school provided hospital scrubs, foot covers, a hairnet, face shield, masks, double gloves. It was a lot of PPE. John was very grateful of his PPE that day, because also we had a smock over it. But John tripped, and he ended up with the entire viscera bucket all over him and on the floor. We hear this loud commotion. We look, and all we're seeing is big guy John all wrapped up in blood, guts, and goo and nasty chemicals. I mean, it's extremely gross. John, he let out the most loud scream. He had a few choice words, and he ran to the shower, and he started getting cleaned up. And when he came back, he was mortified of what just happened. I don't know if it was more of the embarrassment of it going down, or thinking of all of the nasty things from microbiology that we know is in that bucket and living and thriving, that is now all over you. I really thought that was going to be John's last day. he took it on the chin, and he learned at that point that you don't need to carry that viscera bucket so high. We've got dollies that you can set them on, and you can slide them around and keep them on that ground level. I know he got his funeral director's license and he graduated. I hope that he continued down the funeral service path. He was an outstanding gentleman, and he learned the skill of embalming quite well. So I hope he was a valuable resource to his community wherever he landed. And if he ended up back in banking, buddy, I understand, because that was probably a pretty long recovery and mental anguish, thinking of all those things that were all over you. I'm truly sorry that I laughed at that moment. It happens. I mean, it's either laugh or cry in this industry, it seems like. And you've got to laugh to continue on, because you know those difficult moments that are going to call you to crying. You need to save those moments for that time. So those are my two awesome stories for you. I hope it wasn't too graphic. I've looked through at some of the comments. I don't see anything new really yet. I had a question about some pet cremation. We do offer it. Pet burials, there's a few areas out there in Indiana that allow the pet cemeteries and burials. So you'd have to explore that in your local area. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to us here at City of First or your local funeral home. But this does conclude our show here at City of First Cremation. I'd like to thank you all for being here for today's services, but this does conclude our service here at City of First. Thank you. Bye.